Snooker is dead. Well, sort of. In the last 25 years, snooker clubs in the UK have been closing at an alarming rate. My two local snooker clubs, Acoustics in Catford and Riley's in Lewisham, have both closed within the last decade. Acoustics specifically has closed in the last month. So what can be done? Welcome to Table Talk episode 4, where we're getting serious and we're asking if snooker is dying in the UK and what can be done to save it.
So the question isn't just whether snooker is struggling at the top level. The World Championship still pulls big TV numbers. Prize money globally is higher than it's ever been. The tour looks healthy on paper, but that's not the whole sport. Because underneath the professional game, something else is happening. At a recreational level, in towns and cities across the UK, snooker is quietly disappearing. I ran a poll asking a simple question. Have you had to relocate where you play snooker because your original club closed? Out of 226 votes, 46% said yes. Nearly half. That's not a statistic you can brush off as nostalgia or exaggeration. That's lived experience. And when you read the comments, a clear picture starts to form. People aren't drifting away from snooker because they don't love the game, they're drifting away because the game is drifting away from them. And like I said, I began reading some of the comments on the poll, such as this. And this. And this. And it seems like grassroots snooker in this country is dying rapidly. In the 1980s, snooker wasn't just a sport in Britain, it was a social habit. Snooker clubs were everywhere, above pubs, in working men's clubs, dedicated halls in town centres. They were cheap, accessible and communal. You didn't need coaching, equipment or even a plan, you just turned up. But over the decades, that ecosystem has collapsed. Property values rose, city centres redeveloped, rents increased, margins disappeared. Snooker tables didn't move with the times. They stayed large, slow, expensive and space hungry in a world that increasingly values speed and turnover. From a purely commercial perspective, snooker is a nightmare. One snooker table takes up a huge amount of space. It accommodates at most 4 people at a time. Games last a long time. Compare that to pool, darts, gaming lounges or bars. If you're running a business and don't have a deep emotional attachment to snooker, the decision is obvious. That's not snooker's fault, but it is snooker's problem. While grassroots snooker in the UK struggles, something very different is happening elsewhere. Snooker isn't dying globally, it's moving. China has embraced snooker at every level: academies, clubs, schools, televised events, and Thailand has long produced talent and club culture, and now Saudi Arabia is investing heavily at the elite end. From the World Snooker Tour's perspective, this makes sense. That's where the money is, that's where governments and sponsors are willing to invest, and that's where growth is happening. But that leads to an uncomfortable question. Does the World Snooker Tour care about UK grassroots? This isn't an attack, it's a reality check. The World Snooker Tour exists to run a professional tour, not to preserve British snooker culture. If China, Saudi Arabia and other regions are funding tournaments, prize money and infrastructure, it's logical for the tour to follow that investment. But the danger is obvious. If the UK becomes nothing more than a TV audience, or a nostalgia market, or a legacy venue for Sheffield, then what happens when today's players retire? Where do the next generation come from? Snooker is not football. You don't grow up playing it in parks or school playgrounds. Snooker requires tables, space and access. When clubs disappear, pathways disappear with them. Talent doesn't vanish overnight, but it slowly dries up, and by the time you notice, it's already too late. So can it be saved? Yes, but not accidentally and not cheaply. Grassroots snooker will only survive if it becomes smaller, more flexible and more integrated. That could mean subsidised community tables, partnerships with schools and colleges, hybrid venues that mix snooker with pool and social spaces, and investment incentives for clubs, not just tournaments. But most importantly, it requires intent. Snooker won't survive at grassroots level by hoping things go back to how they were. They won't. So who is responsible? This isn't just on the World Snooker Tour, it's on local councils, governing bodies, sponsors and communities. But leadership matters. If snooker's governing figures don't publicly value grassroots participation, it sends a message, and messages shape priorities. British snooker isn't dead, but it is fragile. The professional game looks healthy, but it's increasingly disconnected from the places where the sport was born. If snooker becomes something you only watch, not something you play, then its future becomes very narrow very quickly. So I'll leave it with you. Is British snooker dying at a recreational level? And if it is, do we actually care enough to save it? Let me know your experiences in the comments. Share this with someone who's lost a local club, and I'll see you next time.